This is 5 Live Formula One with Jack Nicholls.
And it's time for the third free practice session ahead of the 2023 Australian Grand Prix. It's the third round of the season, and as we arrive in Melbourne, it is Max Verstappen, the reigning champion, the two-time champion, who is leading the title race, 1 point ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez, and then it's 14 points from Verstappen in the lead, back to Fernando Alonso in third place, 10 points from Alonso back to Sainz and Hamilton, who are fourth and fifth in the championship. And it was yesterday Max Verstappen who set the quickest lap time, a 1 minute 18.790, but we didn't get a huge amount of representative running yesterday, people running different tyres, and in the afternoon the rain came down as well, or later on in the evening I should say, the rain came down, so a few more questions to be answered today for both the teams and the drivers. Alongside me in commentary we have Jack Aitken, the former Williams reserve driver, and Jack, I think a lot of questions to be answered today for the teams, because they didn't get any long running in, they didn't really get any qualifying simulations in yesterday either, so plenty to go on.
Yep, we, like you say, lost out quite a bit of running, and especially at these street circuits, the track evolution is just massive in the run-up to qualifying in the race, so it's going to be a bit of a moving target for the teams as they try to dial in their cars. We did see between the two Red Bulls a bit of playing around the setup, with Verstappen taking a bit of a lower drag approach compared to Perez, and it sounds like they've got a little bit more in the bag once they optimise between those two, which is slightly worrying for the rest of the field.
Yeah, it certainly is. They've been dominant this season in the opening two races. Fernando Alonso looked quick, did an 18.8 yesterday in the second practice session for the Aston Martin team, but that Aston Martin Ferrari fight is going to be interesting come later on today. And can Mercedes get in the mix? It remains to be seen. Hamilton was happy with his first practice session but not happy with his second practice session. Russell was the other way around. He was happy with his second but not his first practice session. So once again the Mercedes may be going in different directions as well, as we saw a lot last year as they tried to work out the best way to deal with their car. Toto Wolff saying yesterday they're not going to rush any big upgrades, and Imola is still the target rather than Baku or Miami, but it's not going to be a miracle when the upgrades come, he said.
No, but it does make sense that the early stage of the season for the teams to split their drivers, as we've seen a couple of teams do this weekend, because you're so limited on track time, especially when you get a bit of rain like we did have yesterday, that you don't have time to afford both drivers the luxury of both trying both setups. You need to save as much time as you can, so going in different directions and getting the feedback and trying to understand which route is the better one, and then tacking the unlucky driver onto that one as well afterwards, is the best way to go about it.
And does the driver get any choice in that usual? Is it like, all right, let's say one's doing low drag, one's doing high, can the driver be like, oh no, I really don't want to do low drag?
It depends. Some drivers will want to be part of that conversation in the run-up to the weekend and therefore maybe voice a bit of an opinion. Others not so much, and you'll just turn up and see the run plan and say, oh, that's what I've got on the agenda today.
Okay, lovely. Well, the session is going to be getting underway in about 90 seconds time. We'll see how busy it is when the teams head out onto the circuit, because already the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, the Monegasque, is in the cockpit at the moment. The car is not quite fired up at the moment, but it's got all four wheels on, as you can hear. The left rear just going on, and so they'll be firing up the car fairly shortly. Hamilton is just wrapping the HANS device, the head and neck support device, around the back of his shoulders, clips it onto his helmet and hoists himself up into the Mercedes. So it looks like he's going to be getting going fairly soon. As I say, missed out on the long running yesterday, did the teams, so that is something that they will try and get a little bit of a view of today also, as Fernando Alonso gets ready to head out in his Aston Martin. He too sitting at the wheel of his car ready to go. Fairly chilly day again in Melbourne. Air temperature at 14.6 degrees, track temperature at 22. Not really much rain expected today. Maybe there's like a 20% chance in half an hour of a bit of drizzle, but nothing too bad. Russell not in his car yet, nor is Logan Sargent. Sargent broke down in free practice 1 yesterday, missed all of free practice 2 as a result, but he looks set to head out shortly. You can hear some of the cars firing up and ready to head out, and we can go down to the pit lane and join Rosanna Tennant. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Yes, we've got a car out on track. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin's just headed out, and he's going to be followed by his teammate Fernando Alonso, who everybody, Jack, is talking about. Everybody thinks he's going to be one to watch. I've just been speaking with Alan Jones, of course, Australian Formula One driver of the history books, and of course world champion. He says he's looking out for Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso, but I'm not sure. Was FP2 just a little flitter? Was it actually the conditions that favoured them, or have they still got this pace that we've seen since testing?
Yeah, they've both gone out on the medium tyres, Stroll and Alonso. Alan Jones, the 1980 Formula One world champion for Williams, and still the most recent Australian Formula One world champion. Obviously, lots of titles for Jack Brabham back in the 60s, but Alan Jones the most recent. Yeah, I think the Aston Martin pace is true, but I don't think it's true enough to be close to Red Bull.
Yeah, one of the interesting things coming out of yesterday was the Aston is by far would be an exaggeration, but they are very quick in the corners. They're running a lot of drag and a lot of downforce, so they were even quicker than the Red Bulls in the high-speed sections like turns 9 and 10. So it shows how well the aero package on that car is working. The penalty that they pay is that they do lose quite a lot of time on the straights compared to the Red Bulls.
For those of you wanting to sync up, we've got 58 minutes and 16, 15, 14, 13 seconds to go. Daniel Ricciardo has just trotted over from the garage over to the Red Bull pit wall, the first race that he has attended this season in his role as Red Bull reserve driver, after not finding a seat for this year, having parted ways with the McLaren team. Christian Horner was actually quite interesting yesterday about Ricciardo, saying when he first came back into the sim, they didn't recognise his driving style. Basically, he'd learnt so many bad habits, as it were, at McLaren that it took him a while to sort of get back up to speed at Red Bull, which was quite interesting, I thought.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what those bad habits were, because you could be argued it's just different driving styles, different cars will need different things, but there you go.
Rosanna?
Jack, I'm watching Daniel Ricciardo on the Red Bull pit wall. He's sitting on the furthest right of the 7 seats they have on the pit wall, joining the likes of the sporting director Jonathan Wheatley, of course the team principal Christian Horner, and Daniel's just sat there. He's rubbed his hands together and he's looking up at the timing screens. And do you know what, he was joking earlier this morning with some of the Australian media, saying, I don't know what it is, I've been preparing the food for Max and Checo all weekend long, and neither of them are taking it because, of course, they get ill. He's straight in there. So he's being his usual jokey self. But he's also said that he's very happy not competing this weekend. But, of course, still got his eyes on making a return to the Formula One grid.
Yeah, well, I think if you're looking at McLaren, maybe you're not too gutted that you're not out in a McLaren this weekend.
No, absolutely not. Again, word in the paddock is just all about can McLaren get back to winning ways? When will that be? This B-spec car that they've been talking about over the course of the weekend. And I asked Lando Norris that on Thursday and said, you're talking about a B-spec car. And he was like, are we? I don't know this. So, I mean, is that the drivers trying to pretend that they know nothing? Or maybe there really is this B-spec McLaren to come in a few races' time, or actually mid-season is what they're saying.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that. He was quite baffled, wasn't he, Lando? But I guess also there's probably an element of eras in all of that, because he's fairly young, isn't he, Norris? And a B-spec car hasn't been a thing in F1 for quite a while, so it's probably Andrea Stella and Zach Browns of this world sort of making a reference to something that you got. Well, McLaren B-spec cars were kind of famous in the early 2000s. I think they did a whole season with the year before's B-spec car or something like that. I can't remember. They used to love a B-spec at McLaren. But Sainz and Leclerc have gone straight on soft tyres.
Also just Lando being Lando. He's not generally the most, I don't know, he doesn't seem to make a big effort to be informed on the team's latest press release. So
No, maybe not. Whereas you, every night you're studying the press releases.
Of course.
You demand to approve them.
I wait for those, nightly emails to come through my inbox and just gobble them up. Bedtime reading.
Rosanna?
Oh dear. I was just going to follow up on the Lando Norris side of things, because the other sort of gossip and tittle-tattle that we're hearing at the moment is it sufficient for Lando Norris to have a B-Spec car or upgrades coming throughout the season? Is he going to get tired of waiting for the chance to fight for wins? And I asked him today, when they arrive at the Albert Park circuit, they walk up what's called the Melbourne Walk, where all the fans sort of queue and try and get autographs and selfies with the drivers. And I said to Lando, there's a lot of papaya here, of course, the colour that McLaren raced in. And I said, are they going to have to buy different merchandise soon for you, these fans? Because they're handing over papaya caps to be signed. And he said, what a silly question, Rosanna. I said, oh, really? Okay. He's like, I'm not going anywhere. So, well, whether my question was silly or not, I'm not sure. But there you go. Apparently, he's happy to stick with the Woking team.
Well, he's got his 20-year contract or whatever he's on at the moment, which I think ends end of 25, I think, is when his contract with McLaren ends. So plenty of time to make a decision on that one. Again, I feel like I've said it a million times, but it feels like Norris should be sort of the number one of Audi's list, and Andreas Seidel's just moved to Audi, but Norris will want to see some signs that Alfa Romeo, as they are currently, are making some progress before committing to an Audi seat.
Yeah, and it's almost like a family relationship that he's got with McLaren, and of course Zak Brown's played a huge role in his junior career as well as his career as an F1 driver. So there's a bit of extra baggage around his time at McLaren, but as we all know, whatever the contract says, with enough will, it doesn't really mean a lot in this world.
No, very true. 52 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. Sainz is quickest on a 19.0 at the moment. 4/10 quicker than Charles Leclerc. Those two on the soft tyre. About 3/10 slower than the fastest times we saw yesterday. Verstappen is third quickest on the mediums, but might go to the top of the times here as he comes into the final corners of turns 13 and 14 out across the line, and Verstappen does go quickest on a 1 minute 18.740, and that is the quickest lap time that we've seen all weekend. Kevin Magnussen has just taken a smidge too much speed into turn 11 at the end of the back straight and run a little wide. Yeah,
he just was using all of the exit curb on the way out and got caught over the edge of it, and once you're over the edge, it's very difficult to get back onto the circuit because there's a bit of a drop. Just sort of scrabbled his way through the gravel and the grass. Didn't lift though.
No, I don't think Magnussen ever does. Hülkenberg up to fourth quickest, Magnussen fifth, Bottas sixth, Joe seventh, Stroll is eighth, but has not really set a time. Lance Stroll, he's 12 seconds off the pace currently. Fernando Alonso has just left the pits in the Aston Martin. Hamilton and Russell are out on soft tyres, and Hamilton is I think doing a sort of prep lap here. Russell was saying yesterday after the session that you can do loads of laps on this soft tyre and it's fine.
Yeah, it was interesting that, isn't it? Because he was referencing the surface here at Albert Park. That's a little bit smoother than some of the other tracks that we go to in the year, and therefore isn't as harsh on the tyre. And that has two effects. It means that it lasts longer, but it then also therefore is harder to get up into that operating window of temperature. So as Hamilton was going through this prep lap, he was actually weaving even down the straights on this lap, and that's something that you usually don't see with the soft tyre. It's usually very easy to switch it on and you just pootle around and start your lap, but he has now started pushing properly.
Stroll goes up to third fastest, about 4/10 away from Verstappen, who's done 5 laps on the mediums and returned to the pit lane. Hamilton is 3/10 down on Verstappen in sector 1. Now the flat-out blast, really, that is sector 2. It's just turn 6 in the middle sector. Charles Leclerc is on a push lap as well on the soft tyres. Hamilton through the middle sector, and he's now 7/10 down, so he lost 4/10 in that one corner, and then straight up to turns 9 and 10. Coming now down to 11. DRS wide open. Turns it into the right-hander of turn 11 at the end of the back straight, which they've tightened last year. Russell pretty much matches Hamilton in sector 1. Leclerc's done the fastest middle sector of anyone, but he is on the soft tyre. A bit of a snap for Hamilton as he gets on the power out of the penultimate corner, out across the line, and it is 5th quickest for Hamilton, a 1 minute 19.1, 1.2 seconds in the end away from Verstappen, and just kind of hemorrhaging time everywhere, really. Russell's backed off in the middle sector because he's 5.5 seconds down. Just see Leclerc across the line, and he goes fastest, a 1 minute 18.731, 100th faster than Max Verstappen. Rosanna.
Yeah, I've just been watching Checo Perez's engineers and mechanics. They are working incredibly hard at the rear of Checo's car. Checo is not in the car. He's standing with his cap on at the back of the garage. And it looks like there's a problem with the torsion bar at the back. I can't even tell you how many limbs I can just see at the back of the garage.
It was dangerous from the Aston. Right on the apex. That was Stroll.
That was some traffic for George Russell at turn 6. That's why he backed off in the middle sector. But do carry on, Rosanna.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, just mechanics everywhere at the back of the Red Bull car trying to fix a problem, but it doesn't look like we're going to see Checo anytime soon. As I say, he's standing at the back of the garage, arms folded across his chest. He's got headphones in, obviously listening to the radio from the team, not the local one, and his cap on. So, yeah, problems on the left-hand side of the Red Bull garage, a.k.a. Sergio Perez's.
Yeah, well, he's still in the pits, as is Sargent, which is a bit of a surprise. Gasly, the two AlphaTauris, well, actually, so both Williams, both AlphaTauris, and the McLaren and Pierre Gasly, and the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, but Norris has just left the pit lane also. So Alonso's on a push lap here, just coming up to turns 9 and 10, and he's just under 2 tenths down. Oh, a little wide on the second part of turn 10, just under 2 tenths down on Charles Leclerc at the moment.
Just watching him now into the long braking of turn 11. He's got a slow Ferrari ahead of him and dutifully gets out of the way. Flicks it into turn 12, the long right-hander, and into the technical braking of 13, where it's really easy to snatch a front. He doesn't do that. It looks pretty clean. And through the last corner to come across the line. 4th
fastest for Fernando Alonso. His teammate Lance Stroll had just come across the line as well. And was quicker than Alonso. It's about a 1/10.5 separating the top 4 at the moment. Leclerc, Verstappen, Stroll and Alonso, but Verstappen's lap time on the medium tyre.
I was just waiting for Fernando to finish this lap, but he had a bit of a moment, not only as you saw in turn 10, the second part of that very fast chicane at the back of the track, but also in turn 1. And on both occasions, it was the same issue. Like, the car was quite lazy and it was just almost understeering a little bit. And in turn 1, it actually meant that as he got to the exit of the corner, the rear finally kind of snapped around and looked a bit unpleasant for him compared to yesterday.
Charles Leclerc is pushing, coming through turns 9 and 10 now. He is fractionally down on what he has managed previously. Hamilton did a lap, improved, but is still half a second away from Leclerc's time and down in 6th position. Leclerc is pretty much matching the time he managed previously. He's down into turn 13, the penultimate corner on the circuit, through the left-hander, then out through the final corner of 14, finds a little bit of time through those final 2 turns and chips away by 0.04 of a second. So he's now 0.05 up on Max Verstappen, and ahead of Stroll and Alonso, sort of crucially, as it were, for the Ferraris. Sainz is 5th, Hamilton 6th, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Zhou and Bottas are the top 10. And yeah, still quite a lot of work going on the rear left of Sergio Perez's car. A guy has just done that classic thing of picking out a little screw and sticking it in his mouth for safekeeping.
They are sneaky little things. Do go missing quite easily.
Exactly. I did that once. I never Oh, this is such a boring story. I'm not going to tell it. The McLaren going to the end of the.
We got time.
So I was doing a job for Red Bull. It was downhill ice skate racing in Canada, and I was basically building a platform because it had all got slushies. The interviewer at the end needed a new platform built, so I'm building this platform. I unscrew this screw with this really powerful drill, like a way more powerful drill than I'd ever done before. Put it in my mouth. So hot. Burnt my lips. Because where it had come out, like... it was so hot. Burnt my lips.
Friction, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly. Which was a new lesson for me. Alonso and Sainz both pushing here.
That was a lot better from Alonso, turn 9 and 10. No understeer this time, so that front end looks like it's getting up to temperature and offering him a little bit more grip on this second lap. He was purple in Sector 1 and even quicker than his previous lap in Sector 2, not quite purple. Again, coming into the very technical last couple of corners, a little kick from the rear as he gets on the power, but nothing too dramatic.
Sainz finds a big chunk of time to go quickest at 1 minute 18.1, and Alonso comes across the line to go 2/10 slower than that. So Sainz fastest on an 18.1, 2/10 back to Alonso, half a second from Sainz to Leclerc, who's back in the pits, and Verstappen has just left the pit lane again. So good lap time from Sainz.
Ferrari have definitely given the buttons, the rotaries, a little tweak here and there, haven't they? They're looking much more competitive today.
Everybody is now out on circuit bar Sergio Perez. So Sargent, Albon, Piastri, Gasly, etc. have left the garage now. So it's just Perez who's yet to hit the track. Rosanna.
Well, I've just watched a mechanic on Sergio Perez's car give a thumbs up to his race engineer, Hugh Bird. He gave a thumbs up back. Sergio Perez has got his helmet on and he's just climbed into the cockpit. Steering wheel sitting on the top of the car. He's being filmed by some of their sort of social media team, quite up close and personal. Looks like he's getting a little closer to heading out on track, but still no tyres on the car. And at the moment, you normally see the mechanics sort of rushing around with the tyre stack. They aren't anywhere to be seen, but at least he's now in the car.
It's one step forward, isn't it? As we've got lots of lap times coming in now on the soft shod midfield runners like De Vries, Gasly, Piastri, Sargent, Tsunoda and Albon. Through the final corner now is coming Nick De Vries out across the line in the AlphaTauri, and De Vries goes 14th fastest, 3.8 seconds away, so maybe a build lap, hopefully a build lap for Nick De Vries. Ocon and Gasly go 7th and 8th quickest in the Alpines, and it's now Aston Martin have jumped up towards the front. It's tough for that midfield because best of the rest is now 9th and 10th in that midfield, so you're not scoring big points, whereas before a best of the rest result could see you, 6th or 7th.
It's a big step, isn't it? So, it just makes it even more crucial to be at the front of that midfield battle now, and we all know how tightly fought it is. But going back to De Vries, I mean, we were just watching his lap there for sort of second half of the circuit, and it did look like a push lap, and he has backed off now, so I'm going to stick my neck out and say it was a push lap, and therefore a little bit disappointing. He's one that I've been a bit surprised at. I thought he was going to adapt pretty quickly to F1 and get up to speed. He's had a very decorated career in both single-seaters and sports cars, and a lot of hype around him after his debut last year, but he's not quite taken to it as quickly as I thought he would.
Yeah, he won the Formula 2 championship in 2019, I think it was, and then moved straight to Formula E, won the Formula E World Championship in 2021-ish. Something like that. I should probably know.
Football season's a little like 2021.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it was season 8, wasn't it? No, season 7. Season 7. He was the season 7 Formula E champion, and has performed very strongly at Le Mans and in sports cars. So
yeah, I mean, he effectively turned down a championship-winning car in Formula E and a equally championship-winning car in sports cars, from what I hear, to come and do Formula 1, which is absolutely justified choice. But it shows the caliber of driver that he is and the options that he had available to him. But I mean, the other thing that's hurting is probably that the AlphaTauri is not looking like the best car that they've turned out in recent years. They are definitely struggling a bit more this year.
And I think I've been quite, I don't know, I can never quite make up my mind about Tsunoda, because sometimes he's looking like, because he came into Formula One with such a lack of experience, quite frankly. He'd barely done 3 years of car racing or something like that, maybe 3 or 4. And and so he was very sort of raw, as it were, up against Gasly, who's, you know, a pretty solid midfield runner, and there were times where Tsunoda was pretty comparable to Gasly, so it might be that Tsunoda's been able to sort of kick on a little. Here's Russell.
Can you check the ride heights, please? Because I feel like I've got more bottoming into 3, well, everywhere, really. Yeah, Ethan.
So Russell complaining about ride height. Ocon going up to 4th place. Any sign of Perez yet, Rosanna?
Yes, he has just headed out on track, out on the soft tyres, so he's got some work to do, because as we know, as we came into this session, the job list was looking pretty long for the teams because of yesterday's sort of curtailed running and the stoppages that we saw with the GPS breaking down, and then the inclement Melburnian weather in FP2 as well.
Yeah,
so Perez will be cracking straight on. Any thoughts on Tsunoda, just while we were touching on him?
No, agreed. I mean, I rate Gasly very highly, and for him to come in and match him, even beat him at times, quite often last year, I thought it was very impressive, and you thought it was maybe a bit of a turning of the page, that this was really him kicking on, and then it doesn't seem to have fully translated into consistent performances yet. But yeah, I agree that it's a little bit hard to put your finger on that team at the moment.
38 minutes and 36 seconds left on the clock. Sainz is quickest at the moment on an 18.1. Alonso is 2nd, Leclerc is 3rd, 4th is Ocon, 5th is Verstappen, 6th is Alex Albon. Alex Albon's just jumped up into 6th spot in the Williams. Perez is just coming into the final couple of corners now to start his first flying lap. He too was weaving around on the back straight, so we'll see what Perez can do first lap out of the blocks.
We're now seeing a lot of improvement from those midfield runners that we mentioned earlier, who are all out, and where the front of the field have generally come in to take their rest and recoup for the next set of runs. Track evolution is starting to show, so Gasly's just gone up into P3 as well, only 4 tenths off Sainz in P1. So I think now we've got Perez on track, we'll start to see the times come down.
Logan Sargent about to come across the line in the Williams, and he comes out of the final corner, goes up to 10th fastest, 3 tenths slower than his teammate Alex Albon. Did the fastest middle sector of anyone, albeit only 1 corner and some straights, and the Williams is good in the straights. Sergio Perez has got a bit of traffic here as he comes into 9 and 10, and he's going to have to battle that one. A Haas ahead of him. Still trying to find his way past the Haas. Nearly got chopped off there. I think it's Hülkenberg that he was up behind. Yeah, Nico Hülkenberg.
Completely oblivious, wasn't he?
Yeah, had no idea. So yeah, it looked as though not only did he hold him up in turns 9 and 10, then Perez tried to pass him on the run down to turn 11, and Hülkenberg kind of nearly turned in on him, to be honest, as Norris comes through the final corner. He's on a push lap, but he's not improving. Currently 11th and 12th, the 2 McLarens, Norris and Piastri, with a Sargent there in 10th place. So Perez gets his first lap on the board, but a compromised one that's 17 seconds off, because he then backed off. Here's Perez's radio.
Man, why did you put me on this gap?
Yeah, I didn't realise Hulk was high fuel.
Okay, so Hülkenberg is long running, basically, and they didn't realise that.
It wasn't going to be the best of laps anyway. He was already half a second down, having crossed the Sector 2 line. So he's still building himself into the session, which is understandable, but yeah, not the best of planning there. Because if you're a high fuel runner, even in practice, you have no obligation to let the faster cars through, even if it was pretty aggressive from Hulk. He just gave no quarter, but he doesn't have an obligation to let him through as you would in qualifying.
Gasly is on a push lap. He's currently 3rd fastest, the Frenchman. Tsunoda is just about to come out of the final corner and across the line. Where does Tsunoda jump up to? Currently 19th quickest. Gets up to 16th quickest. It's going to be a tough season, I think, for for AlphaTauri. So Perez will back off, and now he's doing another cool lap, and then he'll go again in a moment, Rosanna.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just interested to hear Checo's race engineer Hugh Bird there saying that he didn't know the Hulk was on high fuel. I think yesterday Checo said that they were still struggling with the GPS in FP2. Of course, everyone came to a stop in FP1 because the GPS wasn't working. But it seems like Checo's problems continued into the afternoon session. So hopefully he's not still dealing with that. And another thing, he and all the other drivers on the grid, and potentially not all, because maybe not all will be on the podium this Sunday, but interestingly, the new rules say that you can't celebrate over the top of the pit wall when your driver comes through to take the checkered flag on Sunday afternoon. So it's going to be interesting, sort of maybe some muted celebrations.
Yeah, I only thought it recently. I can't remember when it was. I think it was the end of last season. It was one time we had Mark Priestley in, and I remember seeing the celebrations over the pit wall. You know, that's actually a bit mad. It's actually a bit completely mad that the mechanics are like fully dangling off. Because if anything goes wrong, then it's a horror show.
Yeah, you're in a bit of trouble if you fall off there. And you're right, they do get very high up on the wires. And interestingly, here in Melbourne, it's different. They have a glass catch fence, or I'm sure it's not made just of glass. I'm sure there's all sorts of very special fibres to make sure they don't shatter or break in any which way. But it's very different to other racetracks. And so I was thinking, is it because of Australia? But actually, no, it's not. It's for the whole year. It's been in the rules of the whole season. It's been in the rules forever, as far as we can make out. It's just suddenly the FIA are really cracking down on it. But speaking to some of the Red Bull guys, they were just like, it's going to be a bit boring, isn't it, if we just stay in the garage?
Yeah,
and I guess that's because they're imagining they're going to win on Sunday.
Yeah.
Already planning the celebrations.
I don't think the AlphaTauri mechanics are quite as concerned about the enforcement of the new regs.
No.
But it's a bit of a sort of a shame, but also quite mad that it even happens still. Like back in the day when Colin Chapman would run out onto the track and throw his hat in the air, or there'd be the checkered flag man. I mean, the checkered flag man at Le Mans last year had a bit of a lucky escape, nearly got Robin Freinst when Robin was trying to do an overtake or something right at the line. So it is always a bit sketchy to have humans dangling over racetracks when you say it out loud.
It is. And I mean, going to the Le Mans example is one that always got me, because it's so different from any other race to have a guy out there, and it is a race until the line. It's not a ceremonial thing. Like, that is genuinely the finish line. So of course you're going to have moments like that, but at the same time it was quite cool. So
I kind of agree with you, Jack. It's cool, isn't it? And also that imagery of the mechanics and engineers dangling over the pit wall, it's all sort of part and parcel of the Formula One celebrations. You kind of just think of that when you think of drivers taking the checkered flag. It'd be weird not having that.
Yeah, and you think of them all like poised with half a lap to go. When do we run over to the pit wall and all of that? It's good fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It would be weird to see what it's like on Sunday. I'm sure whoever takes the checkered flag, I'm sure their team will find a way to celebrate and maybe make a point about it, or just do something totally different, and that'll become the new tradition.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll all just be pressed up against the glass like they're in a zoo watching the driver come through and win. Carlos Sainz is quickest, and at the moment 2/10 quicker than Alonso. Gasly third, Leclerc fourth, Ocon fifth. Verstappen is in sixth, but he's only been out on the medium tyre. Albon seventh, Stroll eighth, Hamilton ninth, Sargent 10th, Norris, Piastri, Tsunoda, De Vries and Russell the top 15. Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Joe, Perez and Bottas the 20 drivers. So Perez just did a lap, but 2 seconds off the pace at the moment.
it looks like the vast majority of the field have now settled into their long runs to try and get some data from their, that they're sorely missing after yesterday. There are a few of the midfield bunch that are still pounding around doing quali sims, so the two AlphaTauris have jumped up a few places to 13th and 14th, as you say, separated by less than half a tenth, which is always good to see. And Albon looks like he's on a lap as well right now, and improving slightly. The Williams is looking like it's working fairly well, which is always a nice surprise.
Coming into the right-hander of turn 11, there's a yellow flag in the final sector, which Albon may come across. Comes into the final two corners. Yes, it was Magnussen who was slithered off at the penultimate corner, and so that's going to be, well, looks like he's done a big lock up there, Magnussen, by the looks of things, but I'm surprised he didn't come back into the pits, maybe just trying to carry on with the long run, because he'd gone off before the pit lane entry, but carrying on.
He had the choice, but as you say, maybe we're going to get a replay now, coming through turn 12 into 13, this tight very awkward braking zone that, and he's had a massive lock-up with the front left, and that definitely looked like one of those moments where he wasn't sure if he was going to stop it before the wall, was he? Because he was fully locked up.
Yeah,
pretty much
he got a long way into the grass.
Yeah, you don't often see that. The grass might still be a bit wet from yesterday's weather, but yeah, that was pretty serious. And he's going to have a nasty flat spot from that for the rest of this long run.
29.5 minutes to go. Valtteri Bottas is improving here in the Alfa Romeo. His teammate Joe, 18th fastest. Bottas has now gone out on a set of soft tyres and jumps up to 12th place, splits the two McLarens. So Norris 11th, Bottas 12th, Piastri 13th, and then Tsunoda and De Vries 14th and 15th. Russell 16th, but I would suggest yet to do 1.4 seconds. I would suggest he hasn't done a full sort of qualifying sim, but it's not like he's 3 seconds off doing a long run. So interesting one there for Russell, and then Magnussen, Hulkenberg, Joe and Perez, the 20 drivers, and Perez is back in the pits, and the engine cover is coming off again. So that's
perhaps haven't fully resolved the issues from the start of the session. Could just be an innocent setup change as well, but I guess we'll find out with how long this stop is, because yeah, like you say, that it doesn't look like that was a long run for Perez, and yet he was still 2.1 seconds off the pace when he did actually finish the lap. So there's something a bit odd going on there. Meanwhile, mechanics just standing with hands folded in front of them in the Mercedes garage in front of Hamilton's car. They're very happy. No work being done there. Just waiting for the next phase of the session to start.
Ambient Sheep says, remember the guy who used to wave the checkered flag in Australia back in the 90s? He'd be on the track, waving it in front of the cars with astonishing flourish. I don't really remember that, to be honest, but I believe you. I don't, but maybe that was an Adelaide sort of vibe. Carlos Sainz quickest at the moment, then Alonso in second. Those two have just headed out onto the circuit. There's a big old bit of... Oh, maybe it's not that big. It kind of looked like debris initially. It's on the run up towards turns 9 and 10. Might just be a bit of advertising or something. Couldn't quite work out how big or weighty it was, really.
I mean, it didn't fly up when Sargent drove by, and he wasn't that far away, so... don't know, the FIA are usually pretty quick to jump on anything potentially, man, it's a red flag, so there you go. They've obviously spotted it as well and decided that's worth removing. But not sure what it was.
No, it couldn't quite work, because it looked sort of big enough to be a part of bodywork, but
it does look like bodywork to me.
Yeah, but sort of a weird bit of body. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh, I can tell what that is. Quite a big chunk.
I mean, most bits of bodywork on F1 cars are quite weird these days, aren't they? If you isolate, it should be a game. Isolate this piece of side pod, and can you tell what it is? What do you see?
Andrew Benson, the BBC Chief F1 writer, has just put on our little. What was it? I missed it. I was looking at Benson's message.
Well, it's black, so that's not very helpful.
Guys, there's a debris just before turn 9. It's actually very dangerous where it is.
Copy, we'll report that.
That's Charles Leclerc reporting it. Maybe it might, yeah.
It's definitely carbon. We didn't see if it came off. Well, it must have come off the car, but we didn't see whose car has come off, and there's no paint on it in the fashion of this season. Most teams have been quite restrained with the paint buckets, haven't they? So in an attempt to save weight. So there's a lot of bare carbon out there these days, and that's one of the bits, unfortunately.
The Haas car is probably the most predominantly black on the grid, so maybe a bit of Haas has come loose, but everybody now will return to the pit lane because the red flag is out, and the clock will keep ticking, and everybody will return to the pit lane then. So Sainz has done a push lap on an 18.1. Alonso second fastest, 2/10 further back. Gasly third, 4/10 away from Sainz and ahead of Charles Leclerc. Ocon is fifth. Verstappen's only gone out on the medium tyre, so his lap time is not representative. Albon 7th, Stroll 8th, Hamilton 9th, Logan Sargent completing the top 10. And this also shouldn't be a long red flag, because it should be a case of grabbing that bit of debris and then cracking on.
It's from the car of Nick De Vries, the AlphaTauri. We just got a shot of it in the garage, and it's a very odd bit. It's almost been blown just a hole out of the side of the side pod. I don't know what would cause that, but yeah, on the left-hand side of his car, it's got a big hole now.
Yeah, not ideal for Nick De Vries. Just to finish that Andrew Benson story, it's not that exciting. He just sent me a picture. Adelaide, there was a man in a big yellow jacket and hat who waved the checkered flag on the start straight. So there you go. Rosanna?
Yeah, as you can imagine, everybody has rushed down to AlphaTauri, and you can just see a strip of carbon fibre underneath the side pod has just sort of severed. It's not broken clean off, it's sort of snapped, and so the inner workings of the carbon fibre, you can see the sort of honeycomb structure, and it's just left a gaping hole to the innards of the Formula One car. Nick is still sitting in the car, but there's a mechanic now unscrewing the panel of the carbon fibre, which I'm sure these Formula One cars sort of slot together. They're slightly modular, so I'm sure it will come out and something else will be slotted back in its place. But kind of a weird place for a piece of car to remove itself from.
Yeah. Do you sail, Rosanna?
No, did it sound like I did then?
No. There's just loads of boats sailing on the lake, and I just wondered if you sailed.
I do. No, I was a rower. Long levers, as they used to say about me. So you'll be useful in a boat, is what they used to say.
So they just chucked you in a boat.
Yeah, exactly. You sit there and go backwards. Excellent. Sounds about right.
What did you think I said, by the way?
I said, did I sail? I thought you said, did I sail?
Yeah, no, I did, but before that, I asked it first, and then you did a sort of weird answer that didn't... do you think... I don't know. What do you think I said first time round?
I didn't know, perhaps maybe some of the hulls of the boats were made of carbon fibre in America's Cup boats, and maybe the honeycomb structure, and maybe I got so technical.
Yeah.
You thought I was a sailor.
No, it was apropos of looking at boats on the lake. So,
but I am quite jolly, I guess. Jolly sailor. There you go. That's me.
So the red flag has come in, and we've got 22 minutes and 22 seconds left on the clock, and Perez is on a push lap this time, I'm pretty sure, down into turn 1.
Yep, looked pretty clean through turns 1 and 2, now heading into turn 3, and he's had a bit of a lock-up with the front right, and he's now skipping across the gravel. It's not been a smooth session for him so far. He's going to get away with it. He's just driving out very slowly to be considerate to the mechanics, but he's going to have to set himself up again and have another go at this.
It's a fairly chunky lock-up, though. We'll have to see whether that right front survives.
Yeah, he might have a bit of vibration, but frankly, at this stage, he's just going to have to get on with it, because he's had so many... false starts that they may be running out of sets at this point, but we're getting a replay here, and it's a slightly awkward braking zone, of which there are many here. I know I said that already about turn 13, but it's true, because you have just a little bit of steering lock on as you're slamming on the brakes at nearly 200 miles an hour, and that of course means that the weight is transferred to the outside of the car. It unloads the inside front wheel, and it means that it can be quite easy to lock up here. So you see it often, but Perez really struggling at the moment.
So we have got 21 minutes and 7 seconds remaining in this third free practice session ahead of the Australian Grand Prix this weekend. And Sainz is quickest at the moment. He is out on circuit. He's just coming across the line to do a 23.4, so maybe the start of a long run for Carlos Sainz. Nick De Vries waiting to head out. He's still sitting in the garage at the moment as the mechanics try and do a repair job.
It looks like the majority of the field are just hanging out for a little bit as the clock runs down to probably go for a final quali attempt, having had their long runs cut short. So it's yet another session where they've probably not got as much data as they would have liked.
George Russell is pushing here on the soft tyres. He's down in 16th place at the moment through the first sector, and he's just under 2/10 down on Carlos Sainz, so that's a little bit more positive, because Hamilton and Russell actually... Oh yeah, Russell did do a push lap, didn't he, earlier on, but then he got that traffic, but they were 3/10 down previously.
Definitely looking a bit more purposeful with the way he's flicking the car into the corners now, and he's 2.5 tenths off after sector 2, so definitely a bit of a step forward. Track improving as well, so he's just out there trying to get a feel for how much extra grip there is now on the surface, how much he can expect then to move on for quali, but feathering the throttle through turn 13.
Can't really bite it, both axles.
So he's just talking about the warm-up there, and it's what he was referring to yesterday in his interviews after the session, that warm-up with these tyres is definitely more of an issue at this circuit, and he's going to have a little cool down now and go again, and he'd therefore expect to probably improve on this next lap.
And traditionally, Mercedes have struggled to warm up their tyres over the last, in the sort of turbo hybrid era, compared to some of the other teams. It means that they are a little bit softer on their tyres during the course of the Grand Prix, but initial warm-up can be a bit of an issue for them, but we haven't really seen that so far in the desert, when it's been 50 degrees track temperature for the last 2 races.
Yeah, less of an issue then. But that lap did still put him 4.5 tenths off Sainz, so he clearly wasn't happy with the lap. It shows where the track is at the moment. Hamilton now starting a lap on his set, and also looking pretty purposeful over turn 2's curving. Diving into turn 3, no issues for him, unlike Checo. He's got a bit of traffic ahead of him. We'll see if they get out of the way. They do.
Well, I think it is Perez, and I think he's just had another huge lockup at turn 3. Did you see all that smoke?
Yes.
I think it was Perez again, so I think he's had to bail out of this lap too, maybe catching the same flat spot. 18 minutes and 7 seconds to go. Hamilton coming through the middle sector now. His first sector was only a tenth or so away from Alonso. Middle sector is a tenth or so away as well. So he's looking similar to Russell, who ended up going 4th quickest. And Sergio Perez, got another big lockup on the right front. Didn't go off the circuit this time, at least, but has bailed out the lap.
I mean, that's the only difference with the previous lockup. Otherwise, it's a carbon copy. So, I mean, he did probably have a little bit of a flat spot that would have been easier to find the second time around. But still, you've got tools to play with in the car. But for whatever reason, just really, really struggling to get going in this session.
Hamilton goes 2nd quickest, a 1 minute 18.138, 100th away from Carlos Sainz. Fernando Alonso has just left the pits now on an out lap. Pierre Gasly is out on circuit, but I think doing a long run. Russell's on another push lap too.
Looks like Albon's bailed out of his lap. It wasn't going that well, and he's just passed his teammate who's setting up for his own lap, so he's going to have to make sure that he gets out of the way of him. Back on board with Checo, and he's having another go at this. He has got through turn 3 this time.
I just don't feel that it's all okay with the car. I cannot break into turn 1, very loose rear, and then a lot of front lock going to turn 3. Very inconsistent balance corner to corner.
Nothing jumping out at the moment in the data.
I mean, that's just not what you want to hear as the driver. That was the voice of a driver that's a bit lost. He's really struggling. The car's not giving him what he wants. It sounds a bit tricky to drive, and then the engineer comes back and says, yeah, it all looks fine, mate. Must be you. It's the worst, it really is. But he is going to complete this lap. He's not setting any bests, which maybe isn't surprising given the state of those tyres now, but he is at least going to finish a lap now.
Rosanna, have they fixed De Vries after the De Vries debris?
Yes, absolutely. The screen has just been lifted up above the cockpit, above Nick De Vries' head. The little piece of carbon fibre has been refitted under the guidance of the team's reliability engineer, Phil Mitchell. Now there's a name for our audience. They put put the little bit of carbon fibre back on, and he is ready to go back out. He's being lowered down. He's got the soft tyres on. The mechanics are holding the tyre blankets on. Chief mechanic gives him the signal, beckons him out, and he's on his way. Easy as that.
So De Vries back out on circuit. He hasn't missed much. It's the Mitchell thing he hasn't missed much running, De Vries, because Tsunoda's still in the pits as well. So even though he picked up that damage, he's not lost too much time. Now, Alonso's done the fastest middle sector of anybody. Esteban Ocon is 6th and Gasly is 7th. Albon then jumped up into 8th place in the Williams. Zhou has gone 5th fastest, only 0.2 away from Carlos Sainz, and only 1,000th slower than Fernando Alonso. Russell did another quick lap and is now up into 3rd position. So at the moment, the order is Sainz, Hamilton, Russell, Alonso, Zhou. Alonso through the final corner, and he does not improve. So Alonso does not improve, goes slower than Zhou on that previous lap, despite doing the fastest middle sector, which, as I've said before, is just one corner. Hamilton, meanwhile, is on a double cool lap at the moment. Did he push in sector 1, Hamilton? Yeah, he pushed in sector 1 and then backed off in sector 2, so maybe a little traffic for him. But that Zhou lap's a bit wild, isn't it?
Yeah, Hamilton jumping out of the way of a Williams, who he is now upset very dearly, I think. But yeah, it was a pretty good lap. We're still waiting for Verstappen or the other leaders to really set a bit of a benchmark here, because at the moment, Sainz's time... Oh, and we have Zhou off the track. He's spun. And he's made very light contact with the wall, but it looks like he's gotten away with it. Turn 2.
Yeah, on the exit of turn 2. Zhou, is he going to get... No, he couldn't quite get the steering lock to spin it around, and he's not quite as adept as his teammate Valtteri Bottas at the boot turn.
He's found reverse, though, which is no mean feat in these cars, and looks like he's going to be completely... get away with that scot-free, which is not something you often say after a spin at turn 2. So we'll see a replay. But I was just saying, we're still waiting for a real benchmark to be set. The time that Sainz did is still from fairly early in the session, and the track has moved on. But on board now is Zhou as he approaches turn 1. Locks up a little bit on the way in, gets wide over the grass, straightens up and sort of gets out of the throttle, but he still spins anyway. So.
Yeah, sorry about that. But okay, the car should be all good.
Yeah, he bailed out of it very early and went to cut across the apex of turn 2, but there was so little grip on the grass that he spun anyway. So a little bit careless, dare I say it? No, just a bit, yeah, got caught out a bit by the wet grass though.
Yeah, so Zhou having a little spin and just tapping the wall gently with the left front, but sort of got away with it. Right, Verstappen is on circuit now. He has joined the track on a new set of soft tyres. Carlos Sainz is still in the pits for Ferrari, as is Charles Leclerc, so maybe they're waiting right till the end of the session to set another lap. Alonso, meanwhile, is going side by side with Verstappen, and they're both coming up to the back of George Russell as they all sort of jockey for position. Yellow flag out in the first sector. Stroll was just coming into the first couple of corners, but he's still going, so not sure what that yellow flag is for just yet, and that could affect everybody who's just about to start their flying lap, like your Alonsos and your Russells.
This is very quali-esque. We've got a few drivers, like you say, all trying to start their lap, and they're having to really back off. Alonso's backed right off the pace with Verstappen behind him, trying to also make his own gap. And we've just seen from Zhou on team radio that there is a little bit of drizzle around. And there's some dark clouds that we can see, so yeah, hopefully the drivers will manage to get their run in. Looking at Stroll now coming through turn 9 and turn 10, there was a tiniest wiggle from the rear, but looked pretty good nonetheless.
Flying at the moment, Lance Stroll.
Yeah, he was. He's improved. He's got personal bests in both sector 1 and sector 2. Coming into the last couple of corners, no lock up there. Looks pretty clean. Through the last corner on the gas, DRS open.
Third fastest for Lance Stroll, 0.07 slower than Sainz. I think the yellow flag in Sector 1 must be a bit of an anomaly, because Alonso has just done the fastest first sector, whilst the yellow flag technically is out. So I don't think there is actually a yellow flag out there.
You better hope it's an anomaly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Logan Sargent was the driver who was frustrated with Hamilton a few moments ago. And we're also getting some traffic here from the Alpine. Oh, he's apologising. So I think the Alpine of, I think that's Gasly, held up Hamilton at one point.
Something Rosanna said earlier, I wonder if the GPS issues are still lingering here, because we're just seeing so many people tripping over each other.
Fernando Alonso to the top of the times, a 1:17.7, but Verstappen comes through and beats Alonso by just over a tenth of a second. So Verstappen on a 1:17.5, a tenth ahead of Alonso. Ocon and Gasly are third and fourth. George Russell has just started a flying lap, but that's the sort of benchmark time now from Max Verstappen. There wasn't a huge lap on that 17.5. What is, Perez is still out on circuit. He's on an out lap now. I'll see what tyres he's on.
Yeah, I mean, he's, as you say, just over a tenth quicker than Alonso, but the Alpines, for example, are 4.5 or 5 tenths off that time, which is not as big a gap as we might expect. So, yeah, perhaps the compromised warm-up that you had in that little queue before he started, with Alonso and Russell also trying to open their laps, that might have compromised him a little bit. His Sector 1 wasn't the best. It was a personal best, but lacking a little bit. But he's now opening up for another crack at it. Tyres will definitely be up to temperature now, so we'll get a bit more of a feel for this.
Perez is going again as well as he comes down towards turn 1. Rosanna.
I've just been standing outside Zhou Guanyu's garage. He was wheeled back into the garage by his mechanics, and the underside of his car is filthy, really muddy. He looks a little bit like my road car after I've been taking on the English country lanes and potholes. And the mechanic's set to work, having a good old look at all the nooks and crannies. There's a mechanic on his knees now with a little torch, just looking at all the joins. They were particularly focusing on the front left of the car, so looking at the cake tins, looking at the front suspension. They've now taken off the front wing. They were looking at the front wing end plate on the left-hand side. That's now gone, and the mechanics are just bringing a new front wing out now. They'll obviously get that bolted on, and hopefully he'll be out soon, but I imagine they'll want to clean the car as well, because that's one thing you always see up and down the pit lane, the mechanics just constantly polishing their car. I mean, it's a classic Saturday afternoon activity, Jack, isn't it, really?
It certainly is. Right, Perez is on a more reasonable lap currently. He is a couple of tenths down. Oh, but he's locked the left front again. I think this is a different set of tyres for Perez. I could be wrong, but I think it's a different set. Not a new set, but one of his old softs. And this time, coming into turn 13, he's caught the left front. Alonso was on a good lap. He did the fastest first sector of anyone. But has he now? No, he's still pushing in the middle sector, but has lost a bit of time. Esteban Ocon is coming up into the final corner now, on the power across the line, and Ocon goes third fastest. So the Alpines are looking pretty strong so far this weekend.
Very strong, yeah. The pair of them are right up there. Verstappen has boxed, actually, so he's decided that one lap was enough on the softs and doesn't need any more of a reference on those. Alonso still pushing to finish this lap despite that slightly slower Sector 2. Through the last corner, still looking pretty neat. Has he lost much in the last sector with the tyres perhaps overheating a touch? And it's a slower lap by 1/10 from his best, so he doesn't improve, but still a decent lap.
Yeah, and a good first sector for Fernando Alonso. Verstappen is back out, so he's been into the pits, run through the pits, and then rejoin the circuit again, maybe for one final push lap. He's on an out lap now. Magnussen goes up into 15th place. Hulkenberg goes up into 11th place. 1:18.5 for Hulkenberg. Joe, before all of that, had actually got up into 9th place before his spin, so not a bad lap actually from the Alfa Romeo driver. Albon is improving now through the first sector in the Williams. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. What's he up to? He's on the medium tyre, so he must be doing some long running.
It's definitely a quali lap. It looks, well, I say that.
It looks pushy.
He's pushing it. He's using all the curves and everything and giving the underfloor of that Ferrari a good bashing on the exit of turn 10. So if it is a long run, he's being super aggressive, but it looks more like a quali attempt to me.
Yeah, it comes out of the final corner, Charles Leclerc. 1.7 seconds away from Verstappen.
And then he lifts off over the line, so it was a quali lap, despite the compound there. It's interesting.
Yeah. Verstappen's improving on this first sector. At the moment, only a tenth of a second ahead of Fernando Alonso, but he has just found a big chunk of time in Sector 1.
Just getting a replay of Perez's latest lockup. I will be really interested to hear him after this session, see what he's got to say if they do find anything.
I cannot believe this session.
Poor guy. It's just one of those sessions for him. Nothing's going right, but he has got time to regroup before quali this afternoon.
The lockups are so huge. Like it's not like he's snatching a break. He's having a lot and just sailing straight on.
Yeah, it starts very early in the braking zone when the pressure on the pedal is still very high, and that also means that the damage to the tyre will be pretty significant, unlike those little locks that you see at the last minute, which just push you past the apex.
4.5 minutes to go. Verstappen across the line, a 17.7, a couple of tenths slower than he had managed previously. Verstappen is still fastest though, a tenth ahead of Fernando Alonso. Ocon third, Russell fourth, Gasly fifth, Perez jumps up into sixth place, so does get a lap in the end. Here's Bottas.
A few drops of rain.
We expect only drops.
So Bottas reporting a few drops of rain. Rosanna is as well, as is Jackie Baker-Stubbs, who's sitting on the start-finish straight. Nice to have you with us, Jackie. Less than 4 minutes to go. Jack, where was... Well, I can't... Jackie's been to a few races around the world. Austin, maybe? Were you in Austin, Jackie, a couple of years ago? Anyway, great to have you...
weather reporter.
Yeah, exactly. Great to have you back with us. 3.5 minutes remaining in this session. Nico Hülkenberg up in 12th. Oh, someone's been off in the gravel at turn 12 because it's kind of sprayed back onto the circuit. So don't know who that was. Hülkenberg's on a push lap at the moment. Tsunoda goes up into 16th. Hülkenberg in the Haas comes through. And he goes up to 11th. Deposes Alex Albon. Still got the top 12 all separated by less than a second at the moment. Rosanna?
I've just been watching Daniel Ricciardo on the pit wall. Christian Horner's done the classic sort of lean back, check the weather. He's now leant forwards. Now Daniel Ricciardo, he's looking a little bit like on his own because there's a gap between him and the next engineer on the pit wall. And he just turned around at me and I waved and he just flew into his hands and he was like, so cold. And it's freezing and it is raining. Valtteri Bottas was right.
Well, 15 degrees, the air temperature at the moment. Here's Sainz's radio.
You're raining quite a lot now.
Sainz saying it's raining quite a lot. It's not due to rain later on this afternoon for qualifying, I don't believe, but who knows? Or someone's Broly's popped inside out. Oh, poor guy. And he's struggling to switch it back around. Oh,
that sounded like a big crash.
Yeah, and it's Perez at turn 1.
But he hasn't crashed. He's still going. That was just the sound of him clattering through the gravel. We heard it before we saw it because the cameras were on the crowd. Yeah. And it's another lockup. Look at his front right. It's got a big flat spot on it, I think. Yeah,
so bad news for Sergio Perez. And the rain is coming down a reasonable amount. It's all sort of, you can see the raindrops coming down on the halo. But you heard the squeal and the crowd saying, oh! And then as Perez went off into the gravel, but we didn't actually see it, so we will. I'm sure we will in a moment. Here we go, down towards turn 1 for Sergio Perez. Turned into just a big, huge lockup and skids through the gravel, keeps it out the wall, but same thing, like really, really big lockup and goes flying off.
I know there's rain falling now, but there's got to be something wrong with that car.
Yeah.
It's a very, very strange place to have a lockup at turn 1. Turn 3 I can understand, but...
And turn 13.
Yeah. On board now with Leclerc as he had a similar issue. He has actually a smaller lockup, but still decided to bail out of it and just skip across the gravel, straighten up the steering rather than risk trying to turn the car on that very slippery Astro.
So... another moment for Sergio Perez. Verstappen's going to end this session quickest on a 17.5, less than a minute to go. And is anybody pushing at the moment? No, I don't think they are. And even if they were, the sort of rain coming down wouldn't be ideal. All the cars are going to leave the pit lane to go around and do their practice starts in a second.
They're all lining up as they go out for preparing for that practice start at the end of the session, and getting a practice start at pit exit just to double down, get as much data as they can. But yeah, I think everyone's pretty much given up on any serious running now with less than a minute to go and the rain falling.
Yeah, and I think the crowd have given up as well. They're all streaming out of the grandstands to go and find some cover. As got 10 seconds left on the clock. So Verstappen looking quick. Again, there's a lot of unknowns going into qualifying, I feel. Checker flag falls, and the order is. And what happened to? Do we know what happened to Norris? Only did 12 laps in that session. Did a run on the mediums in the first half of the session, then never went out again. I don't think. I mean, I don't think we got to the.
I mean, we didn't see him hardly at all on the cameras, so no. Don't think so. And oh dear, is it continuing? I think Checo has missed the pit exit. It's gone red because it is now a checker flag with 0 left on the clock, and they didn't get him out in time for the pit for the practice start, so he's stranded at the end of pit lane.
Rosanna?
I've got eyes on, yeah, the mechanics have all just bolted past me, and Checo is sitting at the end of the pit lane with the red lights flashing from the sort of top circle to the middle circle, a bit like if you were waiting for a traffic light, and he's now being wheeled back to the garage. What a torrid session for Checo. How's he going to get his mind in gear ready for qualifying when everyone's been referring to him as king of the streets? It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tough one, that, for Sergio Perez. The good news is when you're in a front running car, you get quite a lot of runs in qualifying on a set of soft tyres. So he'll be doing what, 1, 2, 3, 4, like at least 4 runs before he even gets to Q3. Yeah,
he'll easily get 4 runs, and which is quite a luxury, and that's enough time to dial himself in. And it's almost been so bad. It's been laughably bad for him, hasn't it? Just in terms of the mechanical issues at the start of the session, the issues with braking that we've seen through the session itself, and then this. Hopefully he can see the funny side of it and just reset in time for quali.
So the order finished. Verstappen on a 1 minute 17.565, just over a tenth ahead of Fernando Alonso. Esteban Ocon third fastest, Russell fourth, Gasly fifth, Perez 6th, Sainz 7th, 8th for Hamilton, 9th for Stroll and 10th for Zhou. Then Hülkenberg, Albon, Leclerc, Piastri and Bottas the top 15. Tsunoda, Sargent, Magnussen, De Vries and Norris the 20 drivers. So again, Verstappen looking quick, but not a huge chunk clear of the rest of the pack. It always felt that there was more in there though from Verstappen, and he kind of did a different run plan today because he used up the softs yesterday, ran with the mediums first of all during the session today. So I'm not sure that Alonso and Ocon and the like are going to be quite that close come qualifying later on. But Perez is going to be the big question, because if he, as far as the championship fight is concerned, if he has a scruffy quali as well, ends up 6th on the grid, then it's going to be tough for him to come back through and stop Verstappen. Yeah,
I mean, if the gap between the Red Bulls and the rest, as it were, isn't that big, then it just makes Perez's job all that much harder, because I said I hope that he can reset in time for quali, and I'm sure he will be able to during those early runs in Q1, Q2, but it's still going to be an uphill battle for him. And you got the likes of Alonso and the Alpines, and you would assume the Ferraris and maybe the Mercedes, once they get fully up to speed, all nipping at their heels. So there's potentially a lot of cars between him and Verstappen if he gets it wrong. Yeah, the Ferrari's 7th and 13th quickest, so not doing quali runs, doing a lot of race runs actually. 29 laps for Carlos Sainz, 28 laps for Charles Leclerc. Rosanna, busy couple of sessions we've had.
Yeah, it's been a strange run into the Australian Grand Prix, hasn't it? Difficult Friday for the teams to get the data they needed. Then another tricky FP3 session when they really needed to tick through the job list. And for Checo Perez, as you've just been saying, it's going to be a bit of a head scratch, I think, between now and qualifying. He's just got out of the car. He's heading to the back of the garage, and I'm sure there'll be a few things he wants to run through with his team, because something was wrong with that Red Bull. I'm almost certain of it, especially given what the mechanics were doing at the start of the session with that torsion bar at the back seeming to be the problem.
Yeah, it's really interesting. No one else locked up anywhere near as much as Perez, unless he was sort of over-driving a little bit or something. But, you know, he's an experienced guy, Sergio Perez, so I wouldn't have thought that would be the case. Well, join us for qualifying in 2.5 hours' time. You can hear it on Radio 5 Sports Extra or the BBC Sport website. Basically, wherever you're listening now, you can join us for qualifying. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Oh, Carlos Sainz ended up in the gravel. So it was he that brought all the gravel back onto the circuit down at turn 12.
I think that's live. I think that's after the checkered flag because it's raining.
Yeah, because it's raining quite hard. Anyway, that's a weird one. We'll bring you more on that for qualifying. We've got to go off air. We'll speak to you in 2.5 hours. Bye.